This week, our movie club selection is Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. This is the fourth in the series, the first one to come out exclusively on streaming. This was a Netflix special, and it basically brings back all the characters from the movie series, which started 40 years ago.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
It's been a while that the 80s are that long ago now.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop 2 was the first R-rated movie I saw in a theater.
Oh, that's a fun topic.
That was the first one I saw in a theater.
Oh, man, I don't know what mine is. Inside Man, maybe, with Denzel Washington for some reason?
And the crazy thing is, when I saw 2, I had not seen 1 yet.
Really?
I don't know why. I don't remember.
Because you wanted to see a rated R movie.
No. I just don't know why I never saw the first one.
Flight was rated R, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was either Flight or Project X.
Kent, do you remember your first rated R movie?
Unfair, not unfair, but equivalent question.
Right.
When I was of the age of going to quote R-rated, what my first R-rated movie was, the rating system wasn't exactly the same.
Correct.
So the R of today and the R of the 70s
A little different.
would be a little different. But I think the first one that I recall that probably would be the kind of is Straw Dogs. Are you familiar?
No, I've never heard of that movie.
I hadn't either.
It's a Sam Peckinpah, and it's a bloody thriller.
Okay. Well, this one, I mean, quite frankly, it follows the path, a very familiar path of Beverly Hills Cop movies of the past. In a lot of ways, I mean, Eddie Murphy is back. He's Axel F. He's still in Detroit. He's still the wisecracking, break the rules type cop.
Oh, yeah.
But this time we incorporate a new character, and that is his estranged daughter, who happens to play an attorney who works in Beverly Hills and represents criminals. So she likes to represent people who are being accused of crimes, kind of as a rebellious counter to her dad, who is always the one trying to get the criminals. She's trying to represent them and get them, get them their justice in court. And so she's involved in it. But yes, Judge Reinhold is back. A very, 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 very old-looking John Ashton is back as Sergeant Taggart, now Chief Taggart.
Yeah.
And we're kind of off to the races. And I guess as I was watching this, Kent, the thing that came back to me was when the Star Wars sequels came out. So the last batch.
A few years ago, yeah.
And The Force Awakens, there were a lot of people who said, basically, they just replicated the original Star Wars, A New Hope.
Yeah.
And they applied it to this. And to me, that's kind of what this movie did. This movie literally went back and kind of stole from the very first one. And
leaned into the nostalgia.
I mean, when, Glenn Fry, Heat Is On is playing right away. When,
they play all the old hits.
All the hits. Basically, they just replicated the soundtrack from the first movie. That was the first thing I thought of was, man, they're just wanting to go back and play all the hits.
Which is usually a horrible idea to recast the same thing. But remember, not only has it been 40 years since the first one, it's been 30 years since the third one.
Yep. Wow.
So you're talking about bringing back a 30-year-old, quote, sequel, right? Well,
which Eddie Murphy, by the way, just did a couple years ago with Coming to America 2.
Which I did not like.
Yeah, we didn't like that one.
No.
This is better than it has any right to be, frankly.
Yep.
And I'm not entirely sure why, because as you say, it really is kind of there's nothing in there at all that's remotely surprising. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the plot, the characters, but it still works, which is a tribute to, I guess, a lot of things, including the fact, and this is what I wonder. I wondered if people who haven't seen the first one at least. So the next two were terrible.
And I never saw 2 or 3.
Beverly Hills Cop movie is terrible.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if people who haven't seen the first one will enjoy this, right?
Yeah.
Because of so much of the reference to the past. But it is entertaining, and it is Eddie Murphy is very good, I thought. I thought he was very good. My only question is Eddie Murphy's 63, and they've already green lighted another one.
Yeah.
So how much longer can he go on? He's running into the Liam Neeson, these action guys. When you get to be like 65, it's hard to believe you as an action hero.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, Ken, I love the way that you described it, because that was basically what I thought too. It was better than it had any right of being. And because like when I was thinking about it as I finished it, the thing that came to my mind was like, is this the best of one of these types of movie? And by that, I mean a sequel that we definitely didn't need, but we got anyway. And like, it's definitely a little different than Star Wars in that regard, because that's like, I don't know, a story that people want to see continued, where this feels just like, let's do one. Coming to America is definitely a great example of that. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like, I think it's very forgettable. In a week, I probably really won't remember a whole lot about the plot and really what the purpose of it was. But I think the vibe and the hangout nature of it, I thought that Eddie Murphy, that character, he was good. It was like a comfy pair of shoes. I feel like that he just slid right back into with that character.
Well, Nick, you haven't seen the first one. Right?
I have a very visceral memory. One of my earliest memories, because my dad used to love this movie. The only thing I remember from the first movie is when he stuck the potato or banana in the tailpipe.
It was a banana.
Banana.
I remember that, and I
one
think
of my favorite times.
that
Banana
is
in the tailpipe.
one of
banana in the tailpipe.
I've never seen the full first movie in its entirety, but I remember that scene so vividly, and it's so funny. That scene to me is so funny.
So, but you can kind of come at this a little bit more from the perspective of what Kent just said a moment ago, and that is, how would this resonate with someone who hasn't seen the first one? And technically, you really haven't seen the whole thing.
It didn't land for me. None of it really landed for me. And it wasn't because of how it was produced or whatever. I really liked a lot of the fun camera work they did, where they found a way to modernize a lot of 80s camera tricks and shots. But it would have meant more to me if this movie felt like a love letter, but I wasn't the recipient of that love letter. It would have made more sense to me. It would have landed better for me if I would have watched or cared about any of the previous movies. I could tell what was supposed to be a callback, and there was a lot of them, but none of them I didn't care about.
Because you just didn't have the original reference.
Yeah, I just didn't have the original reference, which this movie isn't made for people like me. This isn't a movie you're supposed to jump into. It's a movie for people like
who get
John,
the references.
People who get the references. So it was fine. There were some funny parts. I really liked the helicopter scene. That was hilarious. And that's really the only thing that kind of stuck with me.
I think, Kent, to your point a minute ago and I think you and Josh have both said it's a movie. It's better and had a right to be.
Yeah.
And maybe not being able to put your finger on the why. I do think one of the things that helped here was the introduction of the daughter. And now Axel, Eddie Murphy's character, has another. I mean, she's not a smart ass, but you can tell she's got some of him in her, and he's got a wisecracking foil, right? She's not a wisecracker in the same way that he is, but she sees right through, the wisecracks and can cut right to the chase. And so that dynamic, I think, did help this not feel 100% like the original. That, Eddie had a true foil that wasn't just the main bad guy that he's trying to bust, but someone he's trying to work with in order to bust
win over.
Did you guys also get the vibe that this movie felt kind of like a setup? And Kent kind of answer this because there's already going to be a sequel, but this kind of felt like a setup to kind of pass the torch to Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character.
You thought so?
It's what it kind of felt like to me. It felt like a soft setup. So if it did well, then maybe like that's an option.
Interesting. I thought it more from the daughter's perspective, like passing the torch to her more
Maybe
than
they
him.
both work together
Yeah.
Yeah.
in following movies.
So yeah, I think that's obviously it was set up to do. There's at least one more. Eddie comes back for one more, and then you see, right?
Yeah.
That would be the way I would look at it. I think what this did as well is they wrote a good enough story, right? I mean, it's not a great story, but it's a good enough story to believably bring these people back 30 years later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they didn't have a good story, then it would really be not work, right? But this was a believable enough story that he could have added to this estranged daughter, and Taggart could be the police chief by then, and Judge Reinhold's his quit being a cop and is a private investigator, and for reasons that get worked into the plot. All of that made sense as a way to bring them back. And a lot of times sequels don't have that kind of a story that makes it make sense as why it came back the way it did. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does. And
yeah,
you
no,
know,
it does,
Ken, one
for
of the
sure.
movies that I'm thinking of throughout this conversation is a movie where the original in the series comes a little bit earlier than Beverly Hills Cop 1, and that's Rocky. And so when Rocky came back recently, it wasn't called Rocky anymore. It was called Creed. But that is different than this one in that, you know, the main character, Axel, he is still the driving force of
Yes,
this. And while Rocky is obviously in Creed, he plays a very big part in that movie, he is not the driving force
No.
anymore. And so certainly a difference in how those series kind of resumed and maybe what they want to be moving forward.
And I guess I would suggest this. I mean, they would have to, in this next one, assuming that the two younger characters, Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Taylor Page plays the daughter. They would really have to carry the next one or really do something in the next one for me to think
They
that
could do
this
another
could
one.
be a vehicle similar to Creed, where you now pass the torch and they become the driving force. Because the magic of these films is Eddie Murphy.
Yes.
I mean, this movie, the original Beverly Hills Cop and 48 Hours, which we also did for Movie Club, those were the movies that
made him a superstar.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And 48 Hours was right before Beverly Hills Cop, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, they were back to back. But I mean, this is an Eddie Murphy vehicle. And Eddie Murphy, and I guess that's the one thing I like about this, because for the longest time, you know, Eddie Murphy did the Nutty Professor and kind of a lot of stuff that got away from what made him a star.
Yeah, and that was when I was growing up, and I was like, he's fine. But
and it was nice to see.
I knew him as
It was nice to
Shrek.
see
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy be the Eddie Murphy I remember, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember when he was on SNL, and he carried that show in the second generation after the first cast left. I mean, he carried that show. He was a huge star. And then, I mean, shot to movies right away. And, you know, for a while there, he
throwing
was
the stand-ups.
Yeah, he was, even though, as Kent mentioned, the second Beverly Hills Cop wasn't good, it was still a huge hit because it was Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
You know, he was and I think we mentioned the other day, he had a number one album. He had a hit record.
Yeah.
You know, potty all the time, as I like to call it with Wrigley. So yeah, it would be hard for me to think that this series could carry on like Creed did for Rocky Balboa, because I mean,
Those characters were fine.
Eddie Murphy is the driving force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now remember, this is now a Netflix production,
Mhm.
so there are aspects that you're going to take in with the streaming versus we got to worry about a box office.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you might take a shot without Eddie Murphy because it's on streaming, right? If it stiffs, it stiffs. Netflix doesn't get as many views because this thing got a ton of views, right? And that's all they care about. They don't care about exact number. They don't care about a quote profit like if it was in the theaters, because obviously they didn't put it in theaters. So they're not going to get any of their money back. So I think that'd be possible. I think the issue is going to be how long is it between this and the next one? Because if you get Eddie up into 67, 68, he's not going to be doing another one.
No.
He won't.
Yeah, and like, can they spend this kind of money on a movie again? Like, I don't know.
This is a $150 million budget.
This is not cheap, and I don't know the exact Netflix of it all, like when they decided to get involved, but that is not cheap. And so to put that type of money behind a movie, once again, like what does Netflix want? They want subscriptions. Does having another Beverly Hills Cop movie drive subscriptions? I would have to guess no. I'm not running to Netflix
Subscriptions.
Or to hold them. Yeah, sure.
That's more I think for the streamers now, it's hold.
Yeah.
Right? They want to keep what they got. And yeah, they want to grow, but I think their real issue is because there are a lot of them that are not doing well, right? Streaming services. So you want to keep what you already have. This is the kind of thing that this generation, it might keep them a little bit, right? I mean, that's kind of the logic behind it. And the answer to your question is, on the budget, I can sit here and tell you how you can save $70 million off of that budget. Don't wreck as many cars.
They did wreck a ton of cars.
Yes, they did.
The first scene, basically, when they leave the arena.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Crash.
It's just a new take. If you watch the original, Eddie Murphy's in the back of a stolen semi truck, and it's bashing through every car in downtown Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Or even that car chase scene in L.A. That was cool.
A lot of
like
cars.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they definitely wrecked a lot of cars and spent a lot of money on that. And keep in mind, some of these, like Netflix is getting more and more into the live business. They did the Tom Brady roast, and starting here in a few months, they're going to be the home of Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, and then the NFL obviously on Christmas Day.
And then the NFL on Christmas Day. So, yeah, you wonder as they start to spend a little more money for live rights or different kinds of rights, if the money's going to be there budget-wise to keep churning out films of this ilk that certainly have a huge budget. It's a drop in the bucket compared to what they're spending now on these Marvel movies, but it's still a huge
it's a lot of money. Yeah,
it's a lot of money. But remember two things about Netflix in particular: it's an international streamer.
Yeah,
it's not just the U.S. So having Monday Night Raw isn't going to help them much outside of the country, right? Nobody, right? NFL, we'll see. I don't think NFL is as big an international draw as the NFL thinks it is. So,
Yep, agreed.
So you've got to have things that are not just so American, so to speak. And this is one of those. Comedy translates more universal than anything.
Yes.
By the way, 277.65 million subscribers worldwide for Netflix, which we were talking about Max yesterday. They're below 100, and Amazon, I think, was close to 200 million. So they're even almost 100 million more than Amazon.
So let's just say that's 300 million because I can do that math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And you're getting $15 a month out of them.
Whew. We all got into the wrong business. We should be CEOs of Netflix.
We should be.
Us four together.
Yes. For 1 month.
For 1 month. That's all.
1 month.
I'll take 1 month's salary.
1 month.
Then I'm good to
go.
go.
Yeah, we'd be fired after the month because Nick would be in charge of the movies.
Oh,
and he always picks the bad ones, and so no one would watch.
I have a good track record.
Well, we'll find out.
Well, yes, it is Nick's turn.
By the way, their CEO makes $49.8 million. Yeah, 1 month, Kent. We'll be sitting pretty with that salary.
Yeah, we could take that salary, split it 4 ways on a month.
Good to go.
Still be doing.
Good to go.
We would be retired at that point.
Yeah.
Buy a house, baby.
I can make that last.
All right.
Absolutely. All right, so that is Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. It is on Netflix if you want to check it out. And by the way, the others, I went
Are
back.
they all there?
Yeah, I went back and watched the original over the weekend because I was bored, and it still holds up. So
very funny movie.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good.